The world knew her as the Queen of Disco, the voice that turned 17 minutes of ecstasy into musical history. But on May 17th, 2012, when Donna Summer took her final breath in her Naples, Florida home, something didn't add up. The official statement said lung cancer. The family said goodbye quickly, quietly, behind closed doors. But what they didn't say, what they carefully kept from the public eye, would haunt the legacy of the woman who gave us Last Dance for over a decade. Because when the coroner's van pulled away from that Florida estate, it carried more than just a body. It carried secrets that would turn a straightforward cancer death into one of music history's most disturbing mysteries. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what you're about to hear about Donna Summer's final days will change everything you thought you knew about the disco queen's death. Naples, Florida, early May 2012. The woman born LaDonna Adrienne Gaines was confined to her bedroom, Florida sunshine filtering through silk curtains she'd insisted on installing years earlier. Those curtains weren't just for privacy. They were part of an obsession that had consumed her final decade, an obsession with protection from something she believed was hunting her. But Donna Summer's death didn't begin in 2012. It began on September 11th, 2001. That morning, Donna was in New York City for promotional appearances. She was staying at a hotel in Midtown Manhattan when the first plane hit the North Tower. Like millions of Americans, she watched in horror as the towers burned, as they ultimately collapsed into mountains of toxic debris. But unlike most Americans who witnessed those horrors from a distance, Donna was close enough to breathe it in. The dust cloud that rolled through Manhattan's streets found Donna Summer, and according to those closest to her, she never stopped believing it was slowly killing her. In the weeks following 9/11, Donna began exhibiting behavior that alarmed her family. She became fixated on air quality, on purification systems, on creating barriers between herself and the outside world. The silk curtains came first, custom-made and extraordinarily expensive, covering every window in her home. Then came the masks, medical-grade respirators she wore whenever she ventured outside. Her husband, Bruce Sudano, tried to reassure her. Her daughters tried to help her see reason. But Donna was convinced the dust from Ground Zero had embedded itself in her lungs, and that it was only a matter of time before it manifested as something deadly. Fast forward to late 2008. Donna Summer, who had never smoked a cigarette in her life, received a diagnosis that validated her worst fears: lung cancer. How could someone so health-conscious, who'd never touched tobacco, develop lung cancer? The official explanation pointed to secondhand smoke exposure during her years performing in clubs. But those closest to Donna knew she believed something different. She was convinced this was the 9/11 dust finally catching up with her. What the public didn't know was how aggressively the cancer had already spread. Medical records that would later become the subject of family dispute showed this wasn't slow-growing, treatable cancer. This was an aggressive malignancy that had already metastasized by the time doctors identified it. The timeline didn't make sense to consulting oncologists. How had someone under regular medical supervision missed the early signs of such aggressive cancer? The treatment began immediately. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental protocols. For 3 years, she fought. She released her final studio album. She performed when she could, though each appearance required more recovery time than the last. But something else was happening during those treatment years, something that wouldn't come to light until after her death. Donna was documenting everything. In video diaries she recorded on her laptop, never meant for public eyes, she detailed not just her physical decline, but her growing suspicions about her medical care. In one entry, recorded in late 2011, Donna speaks directly to the camera. "If something happens to me," she says, her voice hoarse from treatment, but her eyes sharp, "I want people to know this wasn't just cancer. There's more to this story. Bruce has the files. The girls know where to look. But I don't know if they'll ever share it." The video cuts off there. What files was she referring to? What did her daughters know? And why did she seem to believe her own family might hide the truth? May 17th, 2012, 9:23 in the morning. Donna Summer stopped breathing. The official cause of death listed was respiratory failure due to lung cancer. But within hours, decisions were being made that would strike observers as unusual, even suspicious. The funeral was scheduled with remarkable speed. It was so rushed that several of Donna's longtime friends and collaborators barely had time to make travel arrangements. Giorgio Moroder, the producer who'd helped create her greatest hits, later expressed confusion about the timeline. "I received the call about her passing, and before I could even process it, I was being told about funeral arrangements already finalized," he said. "It felt like there was an urgency to close this chapter quickly." But the real controversy centered on the decision to hold a private, family-only burial. No public memorial service. No opportunity for fans to pay respects. Even the location of her final resting place was kept confidential, a detail that remains closely guarded to this day. For a woman who'd spent her life in the spotlight, the abrupt shutting out of the public struck many as deliberately secretive. Under Florida law, when someone dies at home under medical care for a known terminal illness, an autopsy is not required. It's optional, up to the family's discretion. And initially, the family declined. No autopsy would be performed. Case closed. But someone, and to this day the identity remains disputed, made a call to the medical examiner's office, expressing concerns about the circumstances of Donna's death. The nature of those concerns has never been fully disclosed. Some sources claim it was a medical professional involved in Donna's care with questions about medication interactions. Others suggest it was a family member, possibly one of Donna's daughters, who wanted answers. Whatever the source, it was enough to prompt the medical examiner to take a closer look. An autopsy was indeed performed, but not the standard examination. Instead, a limited, focused examination was conducted, one that would later be described as looking for something specific while carefully avoiding other areas. The full autopsy report, which would typically become public record, was instead sealed at the family's request, and sealed it has remained. In the months following Donna's death, something unexpected happened. A dispute arose among family members regarding access to her medical records from the final year of treatment. The disagreement was serious enough that lawyers became involved, though the matter was eventually settled privately with non-disclosure agreements. But before those NDAs silenced everyone, certain details leaked out. The dispute centered on medication records from Donna's final 6 months. Specifically, questions about pain management protocols and whether Donna had been over-medicated, possibly to the point of respiratory suppression. One family member allegedly discovered that Donna had been prescribed dosages of opioid pain medication exceeding standard cancer care protocols. When they requested a full accounting of who authorized these prescriptions and why they'd been filled by multiple pharmacies, they hit a wall of resistance from other family members. The implications were staggering. If Donna had indeed been over-medicated, whether accidentally or intentionally, it could mean her death wasn't simply the inevitable result of cancer progression, Without access to the sealed autopsy report, without independent experts reviewing the full medical picture, there was no way to prove or disprove these suspicions. A former nurse who'd briefly worked with Donna's home care team came forward anonymously in 2014. There were days when I'd arrive for my shift and find that medications had been administered that I had no record of, the nurse stated. When I raised concerns about documentation and proper protocols, I was told the family had everything under control and my services were no longer needed. Perhaps the most explosive element of the sealed autopsy involves toxicology findings. Standard autopsy procedure includes comprehensive toxicology screening. For someone undergoing cancer treatment, you'd expect chemotherapy agents, pain medications, and supportive care drugs. But according to a source who claimed to have seen portions of Donna's toxicology report before it was sealed, there were unexpected substances present with no obvious connection to cancer care. The source described finding evidence of benzodiazepines at levels inconsistent with prescribed anxiety management. There were questions about cardiac medications Donna had not been known to be taking. Most troublingly, there were apparent discrepancies between medications found in Donna's system and those her primary oncologist had prescribed in the weeks before her death. The source suggested that someone in Donna's household had been administering medications without proper medical oversight. Whether this was done with good intentions, family members desperately trying to manage her pain, or whether there was something more sinister at play, the source couldn't say. But the existence of unexplained substances combined with the family's determination to keep the autopsy sealed created a picture of final days far more complicated than simple cancer progression. Remember those video diaries Donna recorded? The laptop she'd used to record those deeply personal reflections vanished. Family members offered conflicting accounts. One claimed it had been accidentally thrown out during cleaning. Another suggested Donna herself had disposed of it in her final days. A third version, whispered by household staff, suggested the laptop had been deliberately taken and destroyed. Whatever happened, the loss of those video diaries meant the loss of Donna's own account of her final year. What exactly did she suspect? What files was she referring to? These questions may never be answered, but the disappearance of that laptop, combined with all the other oddities, fit a pattern that was becoming harder to ignore. It seemed someone wanted to ensure that Donna Summer's death remained a simple story. Cancer claimed her, she died peacefully at home, end of story. Those who knew Donna best struggled with that neat narrative. This was a woman who'd spent her final decade meticulously documenting her fears about 9/11 dust, who'd kept detailed records of symptoms and treatments, who'd expressed explicit wishes about what she wanted known. The idea that she'd simply let go quietly, without ensuring her full story would be told, didn't align with the Donna Summer they knew. At the time of her death, Donna's catalog of music rights, real estate holdings, and business interests were estimated to be worth between $50 and $75 million. More importantly, she'd been renegotiating control of her master recordings, a process that would have dramatically increased the value of her estate if completed. Like many artists of her era, Donna had signed contracts giving record labels control over her original recordings. By 2010, she was engaged in complex negotiations to regain those rights, a battle expected to take years and potentially cost millions in legal fees. But if successful, her heirs would have complete control over how her music was used and profited from in perpetuity. Under the terms of Donna's will, updated in 2011, control of her estate was divided among family members in ways that created potential conflicts of interest. Certain parties stood to benefit immediately from her death. while others would benefit more from her living long enough to complete the master recordings negotiation. One particularly eyebrow-raising detail involved an insurance policy on Donna's life that had been increased substantially in 2010, shortly after her cancer diagnosis. Why increase coverage after a cancer diagnosis, when premiums would be astronomical? Who paid those premiums, and who stood to collect? Dr. Richard Ellenbogen, not his real name as he remains under NDA, was one of several oncologists who consulted on Donna's case. In 2013, he attempted to publish a paper about aggressive lung cancers in non-smokers with potential environmental exposure to toxins. The paper was heavily redacted before publication, with specific case details removed. But medical professionals who read between the lines recognized that one of the cases being discussed was almost certainly Donna Summer's. What Dr. Ellenbogen had wanted to discuss was the unusual progression pattern of Donna's cancer. According to sources familiar with the unpublished portions, Donna's cancer showed characteristics more consistent with acute toxic exposure than with slow accumulation of carcinogens from environmental smoke. In other words, her cancer looked less like something that developed over years and more like something triggered by a specific, concentrated exposure event. This aligned eerily with Donna's own 9/11 theory. The dust cloud from the collapsed towers contained a horrifying mixture of pulverized concrete, asbestos, lead, and countless other carcinogens. Studies of first responders and residents documented numerous cases of aggressive cancers developing years after the attacks. If Donna had inhaled significant amounts of that dust, her cancer could have been a direct result, making her, in effect, a delayed casualty of the September 11th attacks. But Dr. Ellenbogen had also noted something else, something the family's legal team was particularly determined to keep quiet. Donna's cancer, while aggressive, had shown signs of responding to treatment in her final months. Her scans from early 2012 showed tumor shrinkage. Her blood markers were improving. She was appearing to beat back the disease. And then, suddenly, catastrophically, she wasn't. Her final decline happened with a speed that surprised her medical team, which raised a haunting question. What changed? In the years since Donna's death, her case has become a fixture where suspicious celebrity deaths are endlessly dissected. Some theories border on the absurd, claiming Donna was murdered by music industry executives for a posthumous sales bump. But there's one theory that keeps resurfacing, one that's harder to dismiss because it aligns with documented facts. This theory suggests that Donna's rapid final decline was the result of medical neglect or mismanagement by family members who'd taken control of her care in her final weeks. According to this version, well-meaning but overwhelmed relatives made decisions about her pain management that, while intended to keep her comfortable, actually hastened her death. The theory points to the rushed funeral, the sealed autopsy, the family disputes over medical records, and the medication questions as evidence of a family desperate to avoid scrutiny of decisions made in Donna's final days. It's not a theory of malicious murder, but rather of tragic mistakes, covered up not from criminal intent, but from fear of blame and legal liability. In this interpretation, the secrecy isn't about hiding a crime, but about protecting family members from the devastating knowledge that their actions may have cut short whatever time Donna had left. Did the 9/11 dust really cause her cancer? The science suggests it's not only possible but probable. The World Trade Center Health Program has documented thousands of cases of cancers in individuals exposed to the toxic debris cloud. Lung cancer is one of the most common malignancies linked to 9/11 exposure. A study published in 2019 examined cancer rates among individuals in Lower Manhattan during the attacks. The findings were stark: significantly elevated rates of multiple cancer types, with lung cancer showing the highest increase among non-smokers. Donna's case fits the profile perfectly. She was present during the attacks, in the exposure zone, and developed aggressive lung cancer despite never smoking. But here's the cruel irony. If Donna's cancer was caused by 9/11 exposure, she would have been eligible for substantial compensation and specialized medical care through the World Trade Center Health Program. Her family could have accessed top experts in treating 9/11-related cancers, yet there's no public record of Donna ever enrolling in the program. Why not? The most troubling interpretation is that enrolling would have required extensive documentation and medical disclosure that certain family members wanted to avoid. Perhaps most telling has been the music industry's response, or rather lack thereof, to the questions surrounding Donna's death. Unlike other controversial celebrity deaths that spawn documentaries and investigative reports, Donna Summer's passing has been treated as a settled matter. The official narrative has been accepted without significant challenge. Some industry insiders suggest this silence is by design. Donna's catalog continues to generate millions in annual revenue. Her legacy as the Queen of Disco remains pristine and marketable. Raising questions about her death, delving into family disputes and sealed autopsy reports, serves no one's financial interests. The music industry, the family, the estate lawyers all have aligned incentives to keep the story simple. But this silence comes at a cost. It means Donna's own voice, her documented fears and suspicions, her careful record-keeping and final video diaries, all of it has been effectively erased from her story. The complex, sometimes troubled woman who spent her final years terrified of what the 9/11 dust had done to her, has been replaced by a sanitized version who simply succumbed to cancer. So what really killed Donna Summer? The honest answer is we may never know with certainty. The sealed autopsy report, the destroyed video diaries, the silenced doctors, the family NDAs, all have created an information barrier that may never be breached. What we can say is that the official story is incomplete. There are too many unanswered questions, too many suspicious circumstances. Did 9/11 dust cause her cancer? Almost certainly yes. Did her family make questionable decisions about her medical care in her final weeks? The available evidence suggests they did. Was there criminal wrongdoing, deliberate harm? That's a much higher bar, and the information needed to make that determination remains locked away. What we're left with is tragedy layered upon tragedy. A woman who survived the competitive brutality of the music industry, who rebuilt her image and faith, who overcame scandals and controversies, ultimately couldn't survive the lingering poison of a terrorist attack. And in her final days, when she needed her family most, decisions were made that may have robbed her of what little time remained. The cover-up, if that's what it was, wasn't necessarily about hiding murder. It was about hiding mistakes, protecting reputations, avoiding liability, and preserving a marketable legacy. Donna Summer deserved better. She deserved the full truth about what 9/11 did to her body. She deserved medical care guided by science rather than family dynamics. She deserved an ending that honored her life rather than rushed her into the ground before questions could be asked. Most of all, she deserved to have her own voice heard, her own account told in her own words. Instead, we have a mystery. A queen of disco silenced not by cancer alone, but by the calculated choices of those around her. Her last dance wasn't the triumphant finale she'd sung about. It was a quiet, hurried exit before the audience could demand an encore. And somewhere in a sealed file, in a medical examiner's office in Florida, the truth waits, locked away, perhaps forever. The question isn't just what killed Donna Summer. The question is who decided we'd never be allowed to know for sure. And in the end, that decision may be the real tragedy of how the Queen of Disco left this world. Not with a bang, not with a whisper, but with a door deliberately, methodically, irreversibly closed.